As we dive into prototypes, we first need to talk about what a prototype is and why it is important. So first, what is a prototype? Now, almost every JavaScript object has a second object associated with it. That second object is called the prototype object. And the JavaScript object can borrow properties from that prototype object. Now, before we dive into this more detail by looking at examples in actual code, let's think about the power of this concept. Let's say we had 4 user objects, as we're showing right here. User 1, user 2, user 3, user 4. They each have an fName property and an LName property, and they have different values for those properties, as we can see, because their names are different. But let's say that each of these objects need a full name method. A full name method that will return the first name concatenated with the last name. So we could go ahead and define a full name method on each of these objects. But that doesn't seem very efficient. Putting on each object, that uses more memory, and we're repeating ourselves. There's a couple of things that just make that inefficient. So the ideal way is to place that method on the prototype object. Now, with the method on the prototype object, then each user object can borrow that method whenever they choose to, whenever they need it. And it's only in one place. If we then need to make a change to it, we go make a change out on the prototype object. That change is available for all of the objects that use that object as its prototype object. So a lot of advantages there. Now, in this example, I'm showing the borrowing of a method, a function that's associated with a property, so a method. If I enter user1.fullname and invoke that in my code, when the code executes, the JavaScript engine is going to look first on the user1 object. It's going to look for a property of full name that it can invoke, use as a method. When it doesn't find it, it will look on the object's prototype. That's the first place it will look. And if it finds it there, it will grab it and it will invoke it. So that is how objects are borrowing properties from the prototype object. The JavaScript engine will first look on the object itself, can't find it, it will then look on the prototype. But what if the prototype had a property up here in our prototype object? What if it had a property of fName and or LName? What would happen then? Would the object use its own fName property and LName property? And the answer is yes, of course it would. Based upon what we described, the JavaScript engine is going to find that property on the user1 object. It won't need to pull it from the prototype object. So this is another powerful feature of prototypes. We can have properties on the prototype object and we can override them on the individual local objects. So this provides flexibility that we're looking for. Now, I said that almost every JavaScript object has a prototype object from which it borrows properties. So there are situations where we could have an object without a prototype object. For that to happen, though, you as a developer would have to force it. So any object created through regular means will link to a prototype object. This means arrays, dates, functions, regular JavaScript objects. These all have prototype objects. And in the next topic, we're going to start looking at some of these and looking at the actual prototypes and what they provide to those objects. So let's move on.